Touch the lake, and a very warm good morning to everyone here. First of all, we at the Pet House, we are very grateful to all our speakers for accepting our invitation and being a part of this panel. And I also would like to thank all the participants here for joining today's program. I'm Tenzin Legman, and I'll be moderating today's first session. So, for this session, we have a very interesting topic, that is quantum cognition and the concept of free will in Buddhism versus logic of excluded middle. And the second topic is evolution of the principle of causality from antiquity to its relevance to quantum physics versus two truths with emphasis on emptiness as the foundation of all existence. And for this session, the chairperson is Professor C.C. Royla, and the speakers for our first session are Venerable Geshe Tenzin Selekla, Professor R. Ramanathanji, Geshe Tenzin Thamjula, and about our fourth speaker, I would like to bring to your kind notice that Dr. Srikant Radhakrishna ji had some personal issues, so he wasn't able to come for the conference. Instead, I would like to request Professor C.C. Royla to please speak on his behalf. Since our program coordinator Domala has already introduced Professor C.C. Royla, so I don't think another introduction will be needed. So we will directly start with the session. So I now request Professor C.C. Royla to kindly. Oh, sorry. I request our chairperson, Professor C.C. Royla, along with all the speakers, to please come on stage and take their respective seats. Thank you. I now request Professor C.C. Royla to kindly proceed the session. Thank you.
Hello. We are starting the first session, and we have three speakers because the fourth one, Dr. Srikant Radhakrishnan, he could not come here because of his health issue. And Tibet House, they told that I can speak something on his behalf on that issue, but maybe I would speak on that issue at the end because I have not prepared the full-fledged lecture, but I know the subject and I have a published book on that issue. So I will say something as a last speaker. Now we have three speakers with us in the dais. One is Geshe Tenzin Telek, who has received Geshe degree, which is equivalent to PhD in Buddhist philosophy from two highly esteemed Tibetan Buddhist monastic colleges, Drepung Losang Ling College and Institute of Buddhist Dialectics. Currently, he is serving as a Buddhist philosophy lecturer at the College for Higher Tibetan Studies at Shara. He has also completed the facilitator training and now certified C Learning Facilitator L1. For the last 10 years, he has been visiting different national and international colleges and universities as a visiting scholar. So at first, I request him to start the session.
강시 시시 송건이 캔단 덤발라나메 야와 땡진 제종 세신 동바 텔레두스. He who speaks on the basis of seeing, this makes him a knower and a teacher unexcelled. I bow to you, O conqueror, you who saw Tibetan origination and taught it. Respected guests of honors, Sangha communities, and esteemed speakers, and all the participants. And Thank you, Dr. Susie Roy, for a kind introduction of me. Thank you so much. And it's my honor and privilege to attend this conference organized by the Tibet House. And this is my first time attending this meeting. And also, since I'm a first speaker, quite nervous. And on top of this, the topic that was given to me was I would say it's a profound, a very complicated, and a lot of discussion could be happen on this. So I don't know. I cannot explain my emotion right now, but hopefully, bear with me, please, for 20 minutes. Also, I've laid down the outlines in four major outlines: the ontological reality from Buddhist perspective, the role of the logic and reasoning, the importance of logic of excluded middle, and application of logic excluded middle on Buddhist perspective. So these are the four outlines that I have drawn, and I have to make the relationship between the actual topic and my specific topic. So I have to draw these lines in between. So on the beginning, I'm going to talk a little about the ontological reality from the Buddhist point of view. What is reality from the Buddhist point of view? Explain, and then the role of logic, the logic and the reality, the difference, like the similarities, and the role of the logic, and then within the logic and reasoning, my specific topic, the logic of excluded middle. What are the importance of this and significant role of the logic excluded middle related with the reality and establishing one's view. So, beginning on the first outline, ontological reality from Buddhist point of view. So this topic, the ontological reality or the objective reality, I think these topics that first of all I've written the happiness in Buddhism depends on seeing reality. So these two things, the relationship between the happiness and the reality, and many systems are also very much argued on the basis of what is the definition of happiness and what is the reality. I think it's very subjective base, and it's very difficult. And I think most of us will feel the same things. Cannot just explain what is happiness. It should explain from different aspect of reality. And likewise, the reality. What is the reality? Then it could be more complicated. What is the reality? So all the different systems are trying to explain the happiness and reality. So my perspective of from the Buddhist point of view, the happiness and the reality, the relation is in Buddhism, happiness is telling more about the different levels of happiness, in terms of not just happiness here doesn't mean just a sensorial pleasure or just a happiness based on the sensory organs, but rather happiness which is more subtle and more dealing with the sixth mind. So I think happiness also can be explained from the different layers of reality. And then reality is concerned. In Buddhism, reality, when we say reality, now it was classified in so many different varieties, conventional, the two truths, conventional reality and ultimate reality, and also reality of objective reality or the subjective reality. So they are so it's so vast and so difficult to say what is the happiness and what is reality. So last time I checked the internet and see what is the relation between happiness and reality, and found out that nowadays the people are so fond of drawing a formula, right? So I found one interesting relation saying that happiness is equal to reality divided by expectation. This is quite true at a certain point, but I don't know how valid it could be. When your mind or happiness is equal to reality means that when you are more closer to the reality, you could be more happiness. But if the reality and the expectation didn't meet, if you expect too much, and when your expectation exceed the beyond the reality, then I think you are not going to attain the happiness. So divided by reality, or some says that expectation minus reality is the happiness. So whatever, what could be, I don't know. But the relation is quite interesting, and it's up to individual subjective understanding. So Buddhism, like saying same thing. Happiness depends on seeing the reality. So in this context, like seeing the reality means, in these terms, the happiness is not just the sensorial pleasure. Happiness is like when you see the reality, you just expel, or you are free from all these different miseries, and we're free from the suffering. So a state of not having suffering at all is a happiness. I don't know what kind of pleasure, what kind of sensation do you experience at that state. Let's say hopefully we all are COVID-free now. That very state is a happy, because we are free from the COVID. I don't know whether you are feeling the pleasure or unpleasurable sensation. It could be a neutral or like a neutral sensation, but this is like the state that we are free from the COVID, and it's a happy state. So happiness doesn't mean that always a pleasurable sensation. Without taking much time. So in Buddhism, all the sufferings that we do not want, and happiness that we exceed. So since the suffering is to be avoided, so all the sufferings in Buddhism are somehow related with the deep, like ignorance. Ignorance is the root of the suffering, and somehow when the Buddha tried to identify what is this root of ignorance, he said clinging to the notion of a wrong notion of self, means the wrong understanding of self is the root of suffering. Means that it is not just ignorance. Doesn't mean that not just knowing the things, but having the wrong perception is the source of suffering. So in order to dispel that wrong view, the only thing, or only the antidote, is to have the right view, have the right vision, or the right wisdom. Then only can able to eliminate the suffering. So this is just a general idea about the Buddhism. What's time? Let me check it. The role of logic and the reality. Now, in order to see the reality, in order to realize the proper or the correct things, the logic is the only tools that can able to reach or see the reality. So logic is most powerful tools to establish the reality. This is common to all. But within the logic, now we use different kind of logics. And now, what kind of logic that we are talking about today is logic of excluded middle way. Logic of excluded middles means direct opposite to each other. So this topic was very since being a monk and geshe, and studied in a monastery, Tibetan monastery, for a very long time. For last 20 years, I have been trained to be a debater. Most of you have seen that monks debate a lot, right? So I was trained to be a debater, and if I look back, but we every day, 5 hours, 6 hours a day, we spent debate in the courtyard on the important concept of Buddhism, like Four Noble Truths, how the two truths are labeled, Shunyata, all these things we debate, but never have much chance to examine what kind of logic that we are using. Actually, we are using the tools, the logic as the tools to prove those concepts. But when logic itself becomes the testify, then it's quite challenging. So it seems for me like this one, when the logic of excluded itself was correct things. So it seems for me that the logic, since actually the logic is a tool to see the reality, but if you again testify the logic, is it true or not, is quite challenging. And I remember, I can say that metaphor that I can use the metaphor of the Prasangika Madhyamika, the Master Nagarjuna used, proposed to the Savatantrika Madhyamika, that you are mounting on the horse. Actually, you are mounting on the metaphor is, you are mounting on the horse, you are riding the horse and asking me, where is the horse? So, seems that using this logic for many years in the debate courtyard to prove or establish the logic, and once asked me that, what is this logic? It seems like I forgot the horse, but now let's do. Thanks for choosing this object, thanks for giving this topic, and let me remind how this logic runs. Thank you. So, what is the logic of excluded middle? So I quote this from one of the great Indian master and the disciple of the Shantarakshita, the great Indian master who came to Tibet in the 7th century, and the master Kamalashila. In his in this text, the light of middle way, Umanawa, he clearly mentioned what kind of the definition of the logic excluded middle. He quote, I quote, those that have a character of mutually excluding each other, such that when one is eliminated through negative determination, its opposite is not affirmed through positive determination, then its opposite has no existence to conceive or something. So I'm not going to read. So the important is when two things or the two phenomena is mutually exclusive, contradictory to each other. The important thing is when you negate or when you refute the other things, the opposite one or the other one should establish to your mind. So this is the logic. So I'm going to give an example down, sorry. So important is when two phenomena are direct opposite to each other, mutually exclusive or direct opposite to each other. In Tibetan we call the ngögel. Ngösugewa means the direct opposite, is a direct translation. When two phenomena are directly opposite to each other, you refute the one of them and the other one should establish to your mind. The best thing is giving example, like matter and non-matter, dependent and independent. These two phenomena are contradictory, not just contradictory, direct contradictory to each other. Means that when we take a phenomena, let's say when taking an example of a human as a matter, since the human is a matter, it rejects the concept of non-matter. When someone able to posit that human is not a matter, indirectly or directly establish in the mind that human is a matter, human being is a matter. Likewise, a second one is the dependent and independent. If things is empty of independent, then one should be dependent. No need to say dependent, but it's saying it already prove or establish or claim that the self is independent because it is empty of dependent. So from the Buddhist point of view, we say that everything is interdependency, right? The view of interdependency means that by not rejecting the theory of independent self, you cannot able to establish self is independent to each other. So these two should work. The two systems is work like rejecting one, propose the another one in your mind. I think so. This kind of logic is very much useful to establish one's view. So in Buddhism, when we say not just Buddhism, when we argue or when we posit, or when we debate, in the debate there are three important modes. First one, when we say refuting others' view. When you refute others' view, this kind of concept is very useful. Not just refuting others' view, then one should posit on your own view, right? What is the right thing? When you posit, so also these kind of logics are being used again and again. Then at the end, refuting critical analysis, right? Critical thought. So all these, when we debate and when we posit one's own view, we use this logic on daily life. So not all contradictories are mutually exclusive contradictory. This is important. Example, yellow and blue color. So this yellow and blue is contradictory, no doubt. Yellow is not blue, blue is not yellow, but they are not mutually exclusive to each other. Because when it's mutually exclusive, contradictory to each other, when you reject the yellow, the things should be blue. But this is not the case. They are white and black and everything, right? There is a third possibility. So the important thing about the direct opposition is they shouldn't be the third. They shouldn't be the third possibilities. Neither of these, right? So important is it should pervade to all phenomena and should be either of these. there shouldn't be any third one. So that's why it's a logic of excluded middle, means there is no middle path. Either you have to say everything is independent, or you have to say everything is dependent, but there is no third, like a middle in this between. Like so I said that like the logic of excluded middle is like a backbone of Buddhist philosophy. So for thinking this way, like we use this logic again and again during the debate sessions, like proving everything is like shunyata. The very like it's coming next. The idea of shunyata. On this, the logic of excluded middle, we prove that everything is empty of self. The very concept of anatma, the selflessness, is based on this logic, that empty of independent self. Without negating the empty of independent self, you cannot able to posit everything is dependent. So, like just like the external, like and also like the modern science and all these things, like use this logic, right? So, on this kind of logic, we create like the science, just like the external phenomena. If there is like too hot inside, the only thing is, even though it's, let's say, it's a cold inside, you can wear a jacket. Jacket could be the countermeasure, but this is not the ultimate countermeasure. This is not the final, because even though wearing jacket, it will help to like prevent the coldness, but it will not eliminate the coldness completely. But the only thing is to like eliminate the coldness from this room is to bring the opposite force or bring the countermeasure, which is the hot. If you raise the hotness, if you raise the temperature, then only thing is the only time that you can eliminate the coldness. So likewise, these are kind of systems that are used in the modern science also, right? Lightness and darkness. If there is too dark, the only thing to dispel the darkness is bringing the light. That's it. So using the external phenomena, likewise the internal minds, right? So when you have an anger and those negative emotions, there are different antidotes. So using the opposite force, like love, generating love, will counter the anger. Generating like detachment will encounter, like we will combat with the attachment. So these kind of system of nature means like countermeasures was being used on such thing, and then deliberately we try to generate love, a genuine compassion, a sense of compassion, and then like eradicate all those hatred and thought of hatred. So this kind of system is being used here. So now significant of this logic. Now the important thing about the logic is I'm going to finish. So one of the most significant importance of this logic was, as I told you, used by the Lama, like the logic of shunyata, the view on shunyata, that Lama Tsongkhapas like to say, if there is no self, let's say there is no self, selflessness, the concept of selflessness. So without understanding what is self, the object of negation, without understanding what is the self, without understanding like a clear, precise judgment of self, you cannot able to say there is no self. Let's say, if I say Tashi, if nobody knows Tashi, how can you able to say Tashi is not in this room? So before saying Tashi is Tashi, empty of Tashi, first you have to know who is Tashi or Ram, whatever. So likewise, when you say empty of self, means one should have a right view of self. Then only able to say that if such self doesn't exist, then empty of self will going to like ascertain in your mind. So the famous analogy, you all know, I've gone through. I just write type in a Google and say it's not just a famous. I just write the famous analogy because it's the rope. The rope snake analogy was used by all different kind of like Vedanta in the Vedanta tradition, Hindu tradition, and also like used by the different. So it's also one of the famous analogy used by the Prasangika Madhyamikas to prove the selflessness. So the rope and this analogy. So when you see a rope, when you see a snake, when you see, let's say in this room, when you see like a rope, seeing a rope as a snake, when there is no light, a dim light, and the condition is so that there is a rope inside rope, then when you like come into this room and when you like see the rope as a snake, you then the fear comes, right? Let's say all of us are fear of snake, okay? I'm sorry if you like real. Some people, it's not the same like emotions, but they could generate fear, right? So let's say when you see a rope as a snake in this room, and then you run away with the fear. Now let's see, what are the options to free from this fear? So I've just drawn out. Saying no elephant in this room, could this help to free the fear from this person? Definitely not, right? No elephant has nothing to do with the like snake, so it won't help. Likewise, saying no snake outside, definitely not going to help because he saw the snake inside this room and fear is inside this room. So saying there is no snake outside won't help. Having compassion to snake. This is like Buddhism love to say this, have compassion. I think having compassion will definitely going to reduce the fear for a certain level, but ultimately still the fear is instilled because it's still there, so it won't help. So the fourth one, do you think saying no, saying like there's no snake in the room, but there is something else. Could this help? What could be the problem? Like I think if they say but means there is not just, it's a non-affirming, like it's like still something there. So when totally eradicating of fear means there shouldn't be left any fear, even the snake and other, right? So the best thing, the only things to free the fear of snake is like seeing, bring this like person in this room, lit the light, and then see the rope as a rope, and seeing the rope is not a snake, right? Empty of snake on this rope. So using this logic, like seeing the rope as a rope, can only able to eliminate the fear of having the snake. Likewise, like seeing the empty of self, seeing there is no independent self, is the only way to prove the self doesn't exist independently. So these logics is one of the core logic, have been used again and again by different systems, and the most important in the Buddhist, like Brahmana, like logic, using this logic again and again. So I think, at the end, I would like to say that very important, as the doctor like Cicero told, like the Schrodinger's cat, right? I don't see any any contradictory between these two. If you can able to make distinguish between this one, it's important to make distinguish between not seeing the existing and seeing the not existence. I think this is the difference. Not just seeing doesn't mean that you have seen the non-existence. So whether you see in this cat in this room the cat is alive or dead, you are not seeing the cat alive, but you are not seeing the non-existence of cat. So I think you have to make difference. By not seeing, you cannot say that things doesn't exist. If you have to say that empty, like seeing the non-existence, you should say reject the existence self. Without rejecting the existence, you cannot say things doesn't exist. Thank you.
Thank you for your thought-provoking lecture, and it raises many issues, and it would be really great if we could have a speaker from quantum physics perspective, and we fixed it, but he didn't come because, I mean, if you look at the computer, I'm talking about the logic, excluded law of excluded middle. If you look at the computer, it is based on a logic called Boolean logic, yes or no. But if you go to quantum physics, the logic is different. It's called three-valued logic. Like not only yes or no, but there is in between yes and no, like Schrodinger cat. And it's not like philosophical debate. The people are trying to build up the technology based on that, whether we can have a logic which is not two-valued logic like computer. Sometimes the scientists, they are little bit skeptic what philosophers said, we say, well, this is the technology we have produced by which you can say that three-valued logic exists. And that's why we invited Dr. Srikant, and he's not here. Maybe I will speak something on his behalf. Now we have a physicist, Professor Ramanathan. Professor Ramanathan, he retired as a senior professor in the Department of Physics at the University of Delhi in 2016 after nearly 4 decades of the research and teaching. His interest and work span the areas of theoretical physics, including high energy physics, statistical mechanics, foundations of quantum mechanics, philosophy of science, etc. So, let me request Professor Ramanathan, and your time period is 20 minutes. Okay.
So, namaste to everybody, all my friends. I'll be talking on it's both ancient and modern concept, a principle, the principle of causality. It has also had its own evolution over the centuries. The title is Evolution of the Principle of Causality from Antiquity to its relevance in quantum physics. So, the way the causality principle has been formulated by the ancients, it has undergone its own evolution, and in modern physics, it has totally changed its perspective. So, let me go about the evolution. In Western philosophy, Plato is one of the original philosophers, and his great dialogues have been very influential in the development of Western thought and Western epistemology. Plato, in 4th century BC, wrote a number of dialogues. In fact, he didn't write them. It was written by his students, and the dialogues spanned over many years of his philosophical discourse with various students and people. In one of the dialogues, Timaeus, that's one of the first statements of the principle of causality. Everything that becomes or changes must do so owing to some cause, for nothing can come without a cause. So, cause as an originating principle or originating motive of an action, that was formulated in Timaeus by Plato. Aristotle, who was his student and also the teacher of Alexander the Great, he made a more elaborate extension of the idea of causality. And cause in Greek is called aithai, and he introduced this word in his metaphysics. And he says any object, say a marble statue, is recognized only in relation to aithai. It may be the material of the statue, the form of the statue, the purpose with which the statue was made, the aesthetics of the statue, finally the uniqueness of the object which makes it different from every other object. That distinction by its uniqueness, that's what he called the final category, and called it the formal cause. So this categorization of causality has influenced Western philosophy over the past 2,400 years. And even before the advent of Greek philosophy, our philosophers from 10th century BC onwards, because the antiquity of Indian philosophy is not known. It may be much older because there was no mention of dates in our ancient literature. So, in the ancient Indian philosophical context, the question of causality is treated as a dual of cause and effect. So, the divergence of different schools, as Professor Sampton also pointed out, there were 6 Vedic schools Indians in Indian philosophy: the Sankhya, Vaisheshika, Vedanta, Nyaya, and Mimamsa. So the 6 branches of Indian philosophy, which all of whom accepted the sanctity of the Vedas, but they differed in the interpretation. And similarly, there were the Shravana schools, Buddhism, Jainism, which did not accord the sanctity to the Vedas, but they had their own ideas of philosophy. But many of the philosophical concepts were similar. But among these schools, there are 2 distinct ideas of causality. One is to take cause and effect as a compound dual, a single entity where the cause and effect just change their roles. The effect becomes a cause, and then the cause becomes an effect, and so on. And the Vedantic schools call this the Satkaryavada, and the Nyaya, Mimamsa, and Buddhists, they differed from this, and they said the cause and effect have distinct, disjoint, though they are joint in the sense that causes the effect. So the causation and effect are connected, but they are distinct. So the Vedantics call them Asat Karyavada. That is, they are not the true Karyavadas. So anyway, so that was the one example of the cause effect discussed in the ancient literature was that of the thread and the cloth. Whether the thread is the cause of a cloth and cloth is the effect, but whether the thread itself has the thread contains the cloth as a without the thread there is no cloth, but whether the thread itself has the cloth in its existence. Then the discussions continue about the infinite regress of cause and effect, moving from the loom of the weaver and the cause of the weaver and so on. The Christian theologist Thomas Aquinas was one of the founding theologians of Christian philosophy. He was basically tried to make the Christian notions in the light of Platonian and Aristotelian philosophy in the 13th century. He took this cause-effect chain to the final cause, resting in the Christian conception of God. So that was the discussion in antiquity. The principle of pratitya samutpada of Buddha may also be viewed as a statement of causality, as one event originating from another. So causality, so cause is it's a very basic thing. Like if somebody hits you, there is pain. So the cause of the pain is in the hitting. But if you go on analyzing this, the cause becomes the effect of something prior to that. And again, the chain goes on and on. So this was the problem of philosophy that even the ancients were aware of. But when the modern age physics dawned in after the Renaissance in Europe, the greats of the philosophy of science, namely, and also of physics, Descartes, Galileo, Leibniz, and Newton, they redefined the causality principle as a mechanistic thing. That is, they made the causal laws the basis of their mechanistic worldview. They defined the law of causality in mechanistic terms by positing that the motion of particles which are governed by laws of motion are causal in the sense that they determine the development of the motion from the initial time and space position to a final time and space position. The action of the causal force results in the specific path, that is the effect for the trajectory of the particle. So the mechanistic view of causality is that there is an initial state, the action of the force, and then the development of the state of the particle to a final state, which is the effect. So this is a mechanistic interpretation of causality, where an external force, the idea of an external force, it determines, it gives rise to a causal development. So all the laws of science and physics are causal laws. They take you in time from one initial state to another final state. So this is the causal development of a mechanistic system. So the cause was identified with the moment the external force acted on a particle or an assembly of particles, and the time development of the system followed the causal physical laws. Therefore, in a way, cause-effect relation is a time-dependent relationship with the sequence in time from past to future, a chronological connection. So, the cause-effect dual is in relation to the chronology. As time goes forward, the cause and the effect, they follow the trajectory of the time development. So from initial state to final state, there is a causal connection. And the causal connection is made by the causal laws of physics and science. So that was the idea. So the arrow of time is basic to causal development. So the past and the future are necessary to chronologically order the order of cause and effect. So without this time arrow, we cannot determine which is cause and which is effect. And that is the problem as we go forward. I'll show you what the modern ideas of science, especially the relativity theory and quantum mechanics, what changes are brought into this idea of cause and effect. In fact, in the late 19th century, one of the greats of statistical mechanics, one of the originators of the discipline of statistical mechanics, Ludwig Boltzmann, pointed out that the arrow of time exists for us humans because we are all entropic entities. Entropic in the sense we are all thermodynamic entities. We draw our energy from the environment and maintain the order of this bodily system for a short period of time. So you cannot go from an old man to a child. You always progress from a child to an old man or an old lady. So there is this arrow of time. And this arrow of time is because of the entropicity of our existence. We exist in a thermodynamic world where our entropy is always go from order to disorder. So this sets the arrow of time. So that is why we are also talking of causality. But the whole thing changes drastically when you go to the modern theories of relativity and quantum mechanics. The advent of relativity and quantum mechanics in early 20th century made the causality principle stand on its head. In relativity, past and future become relative, and so does the sequence of cause and effect. The imposition of speed of light as the limiting speed for any particle, as well as signal transmitting information, requires a definition of causality between two space-time points separated by distances which are of two kinds, namely the two positions A and B which can be connected by a light signal. And the two, when they are not connectable by a light signal because of the limitation in the, because Einstein said that the velocity of light is the upper limit for all velocities. No physical material object can reach the velocity of light. Velocity of light is the upper bound. Beyond that, you cannot have a physical system which moves faster than light. So light sets the velocity of light sets the barrier, upper bound for information to be passed from one point to another. So if 2 points are connectable by a light signal, then the 2 points are said to be causally connected. But if they are separated by such a distance that they cannot be connected by a light signal, then they are said to be acausal, according to the relativistic redefinition of causality. So, what in technical parlance is called space-like separations are acausal, and time-like separations of points is causal. So that's a redefinition which is brought about by the principles of relativity, which make cause and effect relative to the reference frames. So the quantum world leads to more dramatic scenario. Here, due to the nature of the quantum, which can only be described by a wave function, which is governed by the superposition principle, makes the time ordering of cause and effect impossible. For example, a mango inside a sealed box may either be fresh or rotten. Of course, this is just a restatement of the famous Schrodinger cat, but I replace the poor cat with a mango. So the mango can be either in the rotten or fresh state. So whether it is fresh or rotten, even in classical cases, only by opening the box you can, and inspecting the state of the mango, you can say whether it is fresh or rotten. But in quantum physics, the mango is determined by a wave function. So if the mango is a quantum mango, then it is defined by a psi mango. The psi is a wave function. And the superposition says that the psi mango is a superposition of these two states, fresh mango and rotten mango. And in this expression, A and B are numbers which determine the magnitude of the probability with which the mango could be found either in the fresh state or the rotten state. So the Causality principle, just by inspection you can see that causality principle becomes untenable in the case of quantum physics. And this was demonstrated by what is called a quantum switch in an experiment done by K. Goswami, F. Romero, F. Costa, J. Romero, F. Costa, and three more authors. And it was published in the very reputed journal Physical Review Letters in August 2018. What they did was a repetition of a procedure initiated by Aspect. Aspect received his Nobel Prize only this year for demonstrating that quantum mechanics obeys, action at a distance. That is, it obeys the superposition principle, which Einstein found he was very uneasy with this statement, but it was demonstrated by Aspect about 30 years ago. The same experimental setup was used by the gentlemen Goswami, Romero, Costa et al. To set up an interferometer experiment where two beams of photons are subjected to two operations A and B. In an interferometer, they come in two paths. In one path, the operations are in the sequence AB, and in the other path, the sequence is I'm sorry, I've used in one the sequence is XY, in the other it is YX. And the quantum switch wave function is defined by a similar superposition of x causing y and y causing x. So two different wave functions. So when you make interference and observe it, they found that the causality principle is indeterminate. So you cannot hold the causality principle when the particles are quantum mechanical. So that was very important experiment, as important as the demonstration of the the Bell's inequalities violation by Aspect. This experiment tells us that quantum mechanics does not respect even the relativistic redefinition of causality principle. So causality becomes indefinite in the quantum world. But still causality is important at our level because we, as Boltzmann pointed out, we are all entropic objects who are governed by the arrow of time. So we are subject to causality. But the quantum world is independent of it, and it is independent of the causality principle also. Thank you. So, which is
Well, thank you, Professor Ramanathan, to raise an issue which is important both in science as well as in Buddhist philosophy. I can remember one story, maybe it was a fact, I don't know. One day, Gautam Buddha was sitting on the side of a river with one of his disciples. And Buddha said to his disciple, "Look at the stream of the water in the river. And it seems to be continuous. But if you raise your level of consciousness, you'll see that molecules are disjoint, and each instant of time they are not only discontinuous but disjoint. then what is the status of causality in case of Buddhist paradigm? It was a speculation, or I don't know, maybe a fact. Why I am telling this? Because in modern physics, as I mentioned, there is a very shortest scale of length and time, Planck time, below which there is no causation principle. So it is one of the great challenge that how the causation in our everyday world appear from a substratum apparently which don't have principle of causation. So maybe the Buddhist scholars, they can shed some insights or some light on this issue so that my friends who are working in science, they might be more interested and do something in that direction. Now, our next speaker is Geshe Tenzin Damsoe, who was born in Dharamshala, then went to lower TEB schools, and after completing class 10, joined commerce in TCB Bailakuppe and did a Bachelor of Commerce from St. Philomena College of Mysore University. After that, he joined the Institute of Buddhist Dialect School and studied for 16 years on Buddhist philosophy and get a Geshe degree, which is of course equivalent to PhD, all of you know, from Devung Lojaling Monastery in South India. And for the last 6 years, he has been teaching Buddhist philosophy and practices to the Artham College students of the USA and Tibet Fund students, and owing to the Oxford University of England at Oriental Institute as a visiting scholar. At present, he is working at Sara College for Higher Tibetan Studies as a lecturer on the Buddhist philosophy and coordinator. Now let me request Geshe Tenzin.
Tashidile, Namaste, respected Professor Geshe Ngawasamdela, and venerable monks and nuns, and Chairperson Professor Sisi Roji, and the Dr. Sumit K. Mishra-ji, and the speakers, and the Tibet House staffs, and the dear brothers and sisters. It's a fortunate, and also it's a great honor, and also it's a privilege to share some of my views and the things that we have studied in the Institute of Buddhist Dialectic. So, without taking much time, first, homage to the Buddha. I bow down to him whose insight and speech make him unexcelled as a sage and teacher, the victor who realized the ultimate truth, then taught us dependently related arising. So, regarding the Buddha's teaching, like there are two principles teaching, character and view. So, without taking much time, why? Because there are other speakers in the afternoon who will talk about the conventional truth and and also on the emptiness. So, if we talk about the character, it talks about the non-violence, the method, and the conventional truth. And on the view, it talks about the interdependent wisdom and the ultimate truth. So, as for the four seals of the Dharma, all composite phenomena are impermanent, and all contaminated phenomena are unsatisfactory. All phenomena are empty and devoid of self-existence. So, nirvana is true peace. So, I will discuss more on all phenomena are empty and devoid of self-existence. So, this morning, Geshe Ngawasamdela mentioned about the selflessness of the person and the selflessness of the phenomena. So, person here refers to our strong sense of the self, the I, with which refer to ourselves. And the phenomena refers primarily to the mental and the physical aggregates of the person, but includes all other phenomena as well, like the things that you see over here, all around us. And as for the Nagarjuna, without a basis in the conventional truth, the truth of ultimate truth, ultimate cannot be taught. Without the understanding the ultimate truth, nirvana will not be attained. So when we talk about the emptiness, or the emptiness or the ultimate truth, we need to talk about the conventional truth. So the two truths over here, the conventional truth and the ultimate truth, it's a kind of like a two faces of the same coin. Some people, when this talks about the conventional truth and the emptiness or the ultimate truth, they try to see kind of like different entity. So, but in reality, it's a kind of like two faces of a one coin. And the way of the Bodhisattva with the Shantideva, what he said was, without identifying what to negate, one won't understand the ultimate. So to understand the emptiness or the ultimate truth, it's important to understand what the conventional truth is. Without knowing the conventional truth, the interdependent, the dependent origination, we won't understand the emptiness or the ultimate truth at all. So as for the Nagarjuna, what he said was, if a person who doesn't have any idea about the knowledge on the emptiness, and if they ask me like, oh, do you see the tree? I will answer, yes, I see the tree. But people who have the knowledge on the emptiness and the philosophers, when they ask me, oh, do you see the tree? I will answer, where's the tree? Right? So we have to understand like to whom to answer, to whom to talk to. Then Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise on the middle way called wisdom, the doctrines taught by the Buddhas rely completely on the two truths, worldly conventional truth and the ultimate truth. So how do we see? We see the things as we are. We don't see the things as they are. So right now we see each other. You see me, I see you. So how do we see each other? So without taking too much, I will just go in the first with the, let's say, with the ignorance, then with the misconception. So if we get like a little bit attached to it, we feel happy. And if we feel a little bit uneasiness or like dislike, then we feel anger or the frustration. Now, so when we see the apple, like let's say, it's not kind of like an absolute, right? So when some people when they see the apple, they feel very happy, and some people when they see the apple, they like don't feel happy. They don't want to take it. Sometimes, the one time when I listened to the Jagjit Singh song, the ghazal, Jagjit Singh was saying, what is that? Yes. The python or the snake, the serpent was telling the Eve not to eat the apple, and now these days doctors are saying eat the apple, right? So here, like that too, when we see the apple, like it's more of like without the introspection. So when we see the apple, oh, it's kind of like the independent existence. Then, with the help of introspection, like there is no independent existence or like inherent existence. So over here, when we try to see the apple, like the source from where it's coming from, not for only the apple, the flowers that you see over here, and the light and all these things, if we just try to introspect, without introspection, we see as it is. Right. Now with introspection, oh, the mic, who made it? Is it Ahuja or like something else? Oh, Ahuja. Yeah, this company is there. Oh, the metals, where does it coming from? Oh, the light, the Thomas Edison. We can go back, right? So it's all interconnected, right? So with the helps of the five elements, and in the Buddhist, especially in the Vasubandhu's the treasure of knowledge, Abhidhammakosha, we add color, taste, and shape on it. Then as for the, not only it's so strange, why? Because most of the time, like we keep on judging others, right? We keep on we forget to think about oneself. So over here, the environment, how these elements, right, they relate to us, and why is it important? We need the sunlight, we need the water, we need the air, everything. And we are keep on destroying it, right? Literally one day it will become real empty, right? And we will be the destroyer. Right? We talks about the emptiness, 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 but we keep on destroying it, right? One day it will be too late, right? So it's important to not only to think about like, oh, literally, this is emptiness, this is emptiness. It's important to how it is affecting us, right? How it is helping us. So one day it will become a universal in a single atom, the earth. We talk about no self, will perish and will born in the other realms, and also the earth that we are existing right now will also really, one day it will come. When? I don't know. Then the three principal aspects of the path, what it says is, if you lack the wisdom, what realize the nature of things, although you might grow accustomed to renunciation and bodhicitta, you will be incapable of cutting through the conditioned existence at its roots. Exert yourself, therefore, in the methods for realizing interdependence. Now, over here, though you renounce this world, though you develop the bodhicitta, but without realizing the emptiness, it's very, very difficult to attain enlightenment. The bodhicitta and the emptiness, it's more of like the wind and the energy. If there's a wind, if there's no energy, the aeroplane won't be able to fly. Like the same way, if we keep on thinking about the compassion, 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 but if we forget about the emptiness, the ultimate nature, the ultimate truth, then we won't develop the ultimate happiness. Then this is about that was about the phenomena. Now about the self, the Arya Nagarjuna's precious garland. If the person is not earth, not water, not fire, not wind, not space, not also consciousness, and not all, where is the person out of those? Now close your eyes for a few seconds and just think, who am I? Is it Mera? What is it? Then with a self, what is self? Is it a separate entity? Or the body itself is self? Or the consciousness itself? If these are not the self, then what is the self? Then all of these characteristics exist on the conventional level. These characteristics do not inhere in things and events as their ultimate natures. Now with the external and the internal world, middle way argued that one can undermine the basis for the attachment to both the external world of matter and internal world of consciousness. Now, what is emptiness? Emptiness means the emptiness of intrinsic, the existence. This morning, Professor C.C. Roy and Gishinga Sandela and also Gishitselela mentioned about all these things, so I won't repeat it again. Emptiness in the Sanskrit is called the shunyata. Emptiness is like a number 0, the shunya, right? So, over here. And also, wait a minute. The number 0. Without the number 0, it looks like it doesn't have any values at all. But without the number 0, nothing works out. Like the same way, when we hear the word emptiness, what we need to think is, it's a negation of independent existence. We shouldn't think that it's a complete like a vacuum, nothingness. If we think it's kind of like nothingness, then there's a danger of falling into nihilism. Then as for the emptiness, what we think is, it's very easy. But there are 16 different types of emptiness, 18 different types of emptiness. And there's one emptiness called emptiness of emptiness. Right? the lower schools, if all these are empty of inherent existence, there will be no arising and disintegration. For you, even the Four Noble Truths will become non-existent. So these are the arguments between the two schools, the lower schools and the higher schools. And with the Nagarjuna in stanza 18 reaffirms that the true meaning of emptiness is dependent origination. Whatever is dependently originated, that is explained to be emptiness. That being a dependent designation is itself the middle way. Now with the dependent origination, why we have to keep on thinking about the dependent origination? So there are lots of arguments, right? So I won't go too much on the dependent origination. Why? Because in the afternoon session, they are going to talk on it. So otherwise it will become repetitive, right? Then three different types of dependent origination. The dependent origination of cause and effect, dependent origination of whole and parts, dependent origination of mental projection. Now the question over here, now the mere question is, in what sense things exist? What is the mode of their existence? We can only understand by some relation terms, mere designation. Another question that could be arises, whatever the mental project, does it exist? Now here it says not at all. So the mere designated, what we need to think is not only that should be affirmed by kind of convention first, second, but also the reference of that convention should not be contradicted by another valid convention. And third, it should not be negated by the inquiry of ultimate mode of existence. Now, in the three principal aspects of the part, when you know that appearance dispels the extreme of existence, while the extreme of nothingness is eliminated by the emptiness. And you also come to know how emptiness arises as cause and effect, then you will be immune to any view entailing clinging to the extremes. Now here, to put into practice, let's say about the emptiness. If we don't know, if we don't know the ultimate truth, out of ignorance, we have to born again, we have to die again. So because of the ignorance, we have to develop anger. And also we have to develop the desire. So the three delusions, right? So it shows as if the snake and the rooster is coming out of the pig's mouth. So out of ignorance, we do all these things. And what we want is, we want happiness, but we keep on doing the opposite. We keep on collecting the causes of suffering, but not the happiness. To achieve the happiness is important to realize the wisdom. The antidote of the ignorance is the wisdom, and that's the ultimate truth. So we mistakenly, I need to see the watch again and again. We mistakenly perceive things contrary to the way they really are. The more uncovers the truth about the nature of reality, the weaker the force of ignorance becomes. And as the nature of reality becomes more and more apparent, the realization that this ignorance is erroneous will become stronger. So the real antidote of the, let's say, the attachment is emptiness, right? So sometimes what we think is, the impermanence could also become the antidote for the attachment. But sometimes what happens is, if this kind of like pointer, it breaks into pieces, and what I will think is, this is impermanence, so okay, let it be. Then right after a minute, I will see the glue, I will fix it and use for another thing. Again, the attachment comes up, right? Then if we just try to think from the emptiness point of view, then we won't develop any attachment again. Now, when the yogi thinks he is progressing in the understanding, the presentation of the emptiness, he loses ground in understanding the presentation of conventional objects. So in the three principal aspects of the part, the knowledge that appearances arise unfailingly in dependence, and the knowledge that they are empty and beyond all the assertions, as long as these two appear to you as separate, then can be no realization of the Buddha's wisdom. So as for us, when we just try to see, let's say, the conventional truth and the ultimate truth, if we see it is a kind of like separate. Once we attain enlightenment, then what happens is like we can see the conventional truth and the ultimate truth one at the same time. So that's the difference. So yet when they arise at once, not each in turn, but both together, then thorough, merely seeing unfailingly dependent origination certainty is born, and all modes of misapprehension fall apart. That is when discernment of the view has reached perfection. Now in brief, so let's say all phenomena, including the self, lack intrinsic existence. However, because of our fundamental ignorance, we ascribe intrinsic existence to them. Then, now we have listened, we have heard, we have tried to understand. Now, to realize, the ultimate is meditation. The dhyan, right? So the ultimate is meditation. So without meditation, it won't help us to develop the ultimate truth. The things that we say, oh, I know the emptiness, all these things, but in reality, we haven't realized. We have just heard and we have understood it, right? Then, emptiness is also the Tibetan letter A, like that. For the emptiness, it's also a common symbol for the non arising in Mahayana Buddhism, right? Then, once we realize the emptiness, now the question is, when we will realize the emptiness, right? The part of seeing, there are 5 parts, and during the part of seeing, then we will see the ultimate truth as it is. Then, at the same time, we will achieve the out of 10 bhumis, only the first bhumi. Then, after seeing the first bhumi, then when you attain enlightenment, then as I've told you earlier, you won't see 2 separate entities. You will see one, right? Conventional truth and the ultimate truth as one. Then, once we attain once we attain kind of like realize the emptiness, then the perceptions will change automatically. The things that we see now, and once we develop and realize the emptiness, and the things that we see will be totally different. Right now, we are going through the academic, right? So I know. But have you faith in it? Then it's a question mark, right? So it's the meditation, it helps you to understand. So if you don't understand the ultimate truth, we will suffer, the existence of all suffering. And if we understand what the ultimate truth is, and also its existence of all the happiness, right? 21. Now to put in a nutshell all these things in a movie, Tare Zamin Par. It looks like a children movie, right? But the teacher is asking to that boy, right, what do you see? And he answers, जो दिखता है वो नहीं है, वो नहीं है, वो है. जो दिखता है वो नहीं है, वो नहीं है, वो है. So, Tare Zaman looks like a children's movie, but in reality, it has, oh my God. First, I just got wondered, oh, what he's saying. Then I realized, oh, the director has put a nutshell, all the Nagarjuna's view in one sentence. That too with a small boy. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe Tenjin, for elaboration on concept of emptiness. We are almost at the end of session, but as I told before, that I will speak or I will take some minutes which Dr. Srikant was supposed to give a talk. I will try to elaborate the concept she used in the title. I don't know exactly what he would tell. So, what Dr. Srikant Radhakrishnan tried to say on quantum cognition, free will, and its consequences. So, two things are very important. One is quantum cognition. What is quantum cognition? And how free will is associated with quantum cognition. This is a very, very tricky thing, but especially on quantum cognition, I will say, I will give you, I will show some slides where there are several experimental groups all over the world, including the person named Kahneman, who won Nobel Prize in economics. He used game theory in economics, Kahneman. So he is also involved in this kind of experimentations. Let me, yeah. Before going to their works, let me tell you, I have published a book called Decision Making and Modeling in Cognitive Science in 2016 by Springer, where it contains all of the issues, all of the experimental results, and the consequences. So, what are the empirical evidences when you say quantum cognitions? I mean, some quantum like cognition, not exactly quantum cognitions. So, the whole empirical evidences can be classified into 6 categories. The first one called disjunction effect, second one categorization decision interactions, third one perception of ambiguous figure, fourth one conjunction and disjunction fallacies, fifth one overextension of category membership, and the last or sixth one memory recognition over distribution effect or fallacies over distribution effect. I am not talking about all these things in details, it will take lot of time. Maybe I will talk about the first category, disjunction effect. So, I mean, this experiment, they first did it in Europe, some university, maybe Italian university, I can't remember the name. And we repeated this experiment in Bangalore with 100 students from an undergraduate called RR Engineering College in Bangalore. I will tell you the story. So, mathematically what it says, suppose in a set X you prefer A to B and you consider another complementary set which is mutually exclusive than X. In complementary X, X C called, you prefer also A to B. Then according to probability theory, that always prefer, this man always prefer A to B. Mathematically it says so. So this is natural from the classical probability theory. This is mathematical thing, I am not going to, but let us go directly to the experiments. What is the experiment? It is two-stage gambling experiment. You take a coin, then you toss the coin. They invited 98 students, undergraduate students, maybe in the USA also, and there is a protocol, of course. I will tell you the protocol. So they say that let us toss the coin and you have to choose what you like. I mean, if you choose the head will fall, then you will win rupees. In terms of dollars, they give it, but in our experiment, we say we'll give you 200 rupees. Now, if you fail, I mean, if you choose tail, then you will lose rupees 100. This is the first stage of gambling. Okay. Then the real experiment was done with 98 students in USA. Then they told that in the second stage, I mean in the first stage, 69% own. So they are getting a lot of money. 200 into 69, I mean 69% of the 98. And 59% they lost. So lost means you have to give us 100 rupees each. And the rest of the students, they are not informed whether you own the game or you lost the game. Now, the most interesting result comes in the second performance. We say, okay, next we'll perform the second game. Again, we'll toss the coin and you have to choose. So here, people who already own, they can invest their own money because they have the money and they can pay the extra money and to play again to get more money. And who lost, they will also play the game because they thought that I have already lost 100 rupees. So if I play it again, maybe I will gain or I will recover my money. Now, the section of the people, 39% of 98, they are not informed whether they have won or lost. So issue is that even the experimental results say they also took part in the second stage. And according to probability theory, you cannot explain it because their mind may be in a kind of superposed states, win plus loss. One is excluded, one end of the spectrum, own, other end of the spectrum lost, but someone has a mind of both, win and lose. And if you recast this in probability theory, you will see it will violate the law of classical probability theory. But it has a similarity with quantum probability theory. And this is called disjunction effect. I mean, if I ask you, are you happy? You say, okay. If I ask him, are you unhappy? Well, so here you can think of a mind is like in superposed states. But what happens to your brain or neuronal activity? Because either neuron will fire or it won't fire. So this, up till now, we don't know what happened. This was done by Tarski and Safir, and we repeated the experiment in Bangalore with 100 students in undergraduate engineering college, and we found another dimension of the experiment, that gender dependence. We took both girls and boys, and maybe you will be surprised or you won't be surprised, the girls are more prone to play for gambling rather than boys. We have not published the result, but it is under Department of Science and Technology project. We did the experiment. Similarly, there are different type of experiment, and I'm not going to tell you. Maybe let me go to. I mean, all these results are very, very tricky, and without the help of quantum probability, it's not possible to explain all these results. So that's why it is called quantum-like cognition. But the problem is, what is when you say free will? Does free will exist? What is the relation between, say, quantum-like cognition and free will? There are two aspects. When you say that quantum-like cognition in the human brain, then people say, well, in quantum mechanics, there is a principle called Heisenberg uncertainty principle, according to which no two mutually exclusive variables can be determined in any experiment with infinite precision. What is meant by that? Infinite precision. I mean, if we want to measure something, some error will come in the experiments. And infinite precision means the error, you repeat the experiments many, many times, and the error will go to zero. So, what is the difference between classical and quantum? In classical measurement, you can make the error going to zero. But in quantum theory, you can measure both mutually exclusive variable in a same experiment, but not the error will not be zero. Error has a bound for measuring both the things. But within that error, that there is a concept called indeterminacy. So if there is indeterminacy, the question comes whether that indeterminacy led to a free will. We say no. And many scientists, many neurophysiologists, like John Eccles, who won Nobel Prize, and other people, they initially speculated that this might give us clue to understand whether brain has a free will. Why this indeterminacy relation will not help us? Because the first thing we have to understand in neuronal dynamics, neurons are the billions and billions of nerve cells in the brain. So in neuronal dynamics, even the indeterminacy principle acts, it's a very, very small scale, and nobody knows really how indeterminacy principle is effective in case of brain, because brain is macroscopic object. And this quantum theory or indeterminacy principle is very, very prominent or applicable to microscopic domain. Second one is also very important, that in the living systems or living organisms, they are basically non-linear systems. So scientists discovered a very interesting phenomena. In classical paradigm, like Newtonian paradigm, if you throw a stone from here, it will fall somewhere else, but you can solve the equation called Newtonian equation so that you can exactly predict where the stone is going there. This happens because the system is deterministic systems. But scientists discovered a very strange phenomena. Even within this deterministic framework, if there is slight variation of the initial condition, I take the stone here in my hand, then I am trying to throw it. Here in my hand, if I change slightest variation in the positions, then there will be something which happens which is beyond my prediction. A chaos will appear. This is called chaos theory. Within deterministic system, this chaos appears. So, is it responsible for understanding the free will? We say we don't know. Why? Because this first thing, why we will apply this kind of things for brain function? Because this is a living organism, and brain, if you want to study behavior of the brain, you have to use nonlinear dynamics. So this is a nonlinear dynamics, and chaos can be found there. But tricky thing is that the result of this experiment or chaos theory cannot be differentiated from usual classical probability theory. So you cannot say whether this is the result of chaos theory or simply the probability theory, where we don't know, we are ignorant of the initial condition, ignorance of knowledge. So up till now, the understanding of the scientists say that we don't find the existence of free will in case of brain function. So still the debate is going on, and I don't know what Dr. Srikant would say, but this is the current status of the debate. Maybe I will tell you a little more and then I'll stop it. Now comes, people are discussing that Buddhist logic and other things like the issue is cognition and logic. Logic and cognition are either remotely connected or not connected at all. Logic, which deals with the specifying correct inference, is dealt in the domain of philosophy, whereas other one, that is cognition, is dealt in the domain of psychology, which is usually viewed as the mental activity. So debate lies in the relation between logic and psychology. And logic, and now let us go what the other people, other logicians say about that. You know, Edmund Husserl, he said that logic does not derive its basic principles from psychology. And logic does not describe psychological states and events. Susan Hack is another pioneering person. He said, logic has nothing to do with the mental processes. And McNamara, he proposed that logic and psychology contains each other like the mathematics and physics constrains each other. So logic and decision making. If you look at the gambling or all kinds of experiment, this is basically decision making. Because if I toss a coin, then you have to take decision whether I will opt for head or tail. So logic is generally considered as a philosophy of valid reasoning. It is primarily studied in the discipline like philosophy, mathematics, semantics, and computer science. And I told you already that George Boole, English mathematician, developed a system of logical thought known as Boolean logic. And, or, and not are the common Boolean operations used in logical systems. Accordingly, you can build up truth tables and you can explain the computer mechanism based on Boolean logic. But as soon as the different experiments, especially in microscopic domain, quantum theory comes, then it is shown it is non-Boolean logic. So, in case of brain decision making, we are getting some empirical evidences which clearly indicates that Boolean logic may not be applicable there. And many Buddhist scholars are here who are interested in Buddhist psychology. They may shed some new light on this issue, that what is the role of logic and psychology, and then quantum-like or non-Boolean type of logic. So let me thank all of you. I was presenting some concept which Dr. Srikant was supposed to give.
Thank you all the speakers. So now we'll start with the question and answer session for a few minutes. I think we can only take 1 or 2 questions. So after that we will have lunch. So I request from the audience to please raise your questions related to this session topic. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for the enlightening talk. I want to ask a question to Venerable Geshe Tenzin Selekji. Sir, could you please elaborate on the principle which you just mentioned in the end of your talk, seeing the non-existence and not seeing the existence? And is love and hate are the direct opposites? Or, one can be neutral also? There can be a third dimension.
Thank you. As far as like the self and the selflessness, and these two are, as I said, mutually exclusive to each other, right? So like independent and dependent, and like matter and non-matter, these are mutually exclusive, contradictory, and also the direct opposite. But so as I said, like these are the like in these concept, what we can apply is there is no third possibilities. Either the things should be either independent or or dependence. There is no third possibilities. But when we apply these things like as your questions like these like another examples like light and darkness, and like hot and cold, and also the compassion, love and anger. These things are like not like the mutually exclusive contradictory, because there are many emotions, neither love nor hatred. But we apply these principles that in order to generate love, we like diminish the anger, and in order to like in order to release like in order to reduce the anger, we use this principle of raising the opposite counter or countermeasure to reduce the anger. So it is not as like a direct opposite or mutually exclusive, but we use this logic as a base to bring the encounter force antidote, and then reduce the opposite.
And could you please explain that?
Oh yeah. Thank you. So what I'm saying is you have to make distinguish between not seeing and seeing non-existence. So I'm saying that not seeing is the reason for seeing non-existence. Means that by not seeing the person in this room doesn't have to be you are not seeing the non-existence of person. Could be let's say if I ask like, is there any ghost or the spirit in this room or not? So for people like us, I think I'm not sure whether some of you might have like a power of seeing the ghost, but for me, just like for me, if you ask me, is there any ghost or is there any like spirit in this room or not, I would say, no, I'm not going to say the non-existence of ghost or spirit in this room, because I have not just seen it. Because if you can able to say the non-existence of ghost means you have to reject the existence of God, like without understanding the existence of God, without knowing the spirit exists or not, you cannot say it doesn't exist. But this is my just counter questions to anyone. But as I said before, like to know the empty of self, like you have to identify the self itself. So for this, I give an example of, let's say, Tenzin Sanlek. Without knowing Tenzin Sanlek, you cannot say there is no Tenzin Sanlek in this room. So my question is this: if this room is empty of person, can we say that Tenzin Sanlek doesn't exist in this room? By knowing the empty of person in this room, is it able to say that there is no Tenzin Sanlek in this room? Do we really need to know Tenzin Sanlek, the absence of Tenzin Sanlek in this room, to understand Tenzin Sanlek? Hopefully you get it. If there is no person at the room, like confirming that there is no person in this room at all, you can easily say that there is no Tenzin Sanlek. Do we really need to know Tenzin Sanlek precisely to say there is no Tenzin Sanlek in this room? So I don't know how the logic prevails. If there is no general, if you negate the general, I think specific.
I think, may I interpret?
Yes, please.
His question is referring to another dimension. What you have been saying is mostly on how we perceive and their own existence in general, negating or exclusive to mutually exclusive. But I think he's referring to the existence of these two, the compassion or loving kindness and hatred in our own mental stream. One is antidote and one is to to be negated by the antidote, to be reduced. So whether these two exist simultaneously in one's own, mental continuum at a time.
At the same time.
Right.
I don't think like at the same time, at the same moment, at one person, it is like not possible to generate anger at the same time and hate, like anger and love and compassion cannot.
This is what he is referring to.
Thank you. We have second question from. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, can I one more, Dira? So sometimes like when we do the meditation, right, let's say if you have lots of anger, what do we say is like do the meditation on love, like that. Do you have like too much attachment? Then what we say is like do the meditation of like impurities. And if you have like strong sense of like let's say the permanent, do the meditation on the impermanence, like that. So that's what we say and what we do.
Thank you.
Greetings everyone, my name is Jigmet and my question is again to Venerable Geshe Tselegla. So my question is, as you discussed about the two phenomena, like they're directly opposite to each other. We refute one and then we establish the other in our mind, right? So being a forensic student, like what comes in my mind is about the probability, the concept of probability. We even use in maths, in a regular life also. Like for example, I'll give an example, like there is a road accident, for example. So we reconstruct the crime scene thinking that, oh, this must be the probability. Like we cannot just conclude, yeah, either this or either that. What in this case, what about the concept of probability? Can you elaborate about this? Thank you.
So so I think the concept of the principle of logic excluded middle is only valid for those when you determine which is what. Does it exist or not within these two? First, you have to understand one of thing. So probability and doubt. When you are in the doubt and probability like situation, like the mango in the box or Schrodinger's cat, you are in the doubt. So as long as you are in the doubt, I think you won't able to say you are in the middle. This is not the middle that because you like, as long as you are in the doubt, you cannot say either like things exist or do not exist. You are like, it's a different state. So so the very motive of this excluded middle is to determine this is this, because it's very much valid in the science and in the philosophical, because whatever the Buddha's possible to set a concept, you have to say there is provision. If things is this, like Buddha said, all phenomena are impermanent. So this is a provision. So to say everything, all contaminated phenomena are impermanent, so you have to know that things that exist is whether it's permanent or not. Without understanding a proper understanding of impermanent, you cannot say this is impermanent. So determination or logical analysis to be make this concept is very useful. So you have to be surpass your doubt from this one. As long as you're in the doubt, you are not in this like system of this principle.
Yeah, maybe I can add something more. Because when somebody says probability, there are basically, in science, basically two concepts. One is related to ignorance of knowledge. Another, we say, a kind of intrinsic thing. Like, you see that Robert Brown is a doctor. By the end of 19th century, he discovered a phenomena called Brownian motion. What is that? He used pollen grain and placed in the water. Then he found that pollen grains are moving randomly. This is called Brownian motion. Then Einstein, 1905, he published a paper, it's a pioneering paper, and he derived the theory. So here, this Brownian motion, this randomness is inherent or intrinsic. But if you toss a coin, then this probability associated with tossing the coin because of the ignorance of initial knowledge. What is meant by that? I mean, if you know exactly the mass of the coin or how you are tossing it, if you know this exact condition, then you can determine what is going to happen. So this probability and the other one, they are two different concepts in modern science. But the issue is, I know Jain philosophy, they specifically consider or use a term which is called related to probability. So whether in Buddhist philosophy you have that type of concept also, and what type of probability it might happen.
The His Holiness the Dalai Lama, normally when he talks about the Buddhists, he divides the Buddhists into Buddhist science, Buddhist philosophy, and the Buddhist religion. And the Buddhist science is more of like looking for a fact, and Buddhist philosophy is more of like looking for the possibilities, right, and the probabilities. So whatever it may be. Then the Buddhist religion, okay, developing a firm conviction, yes, this is it, to finalize. So over here in the philosophy, there are lots of possibilities.
Thank you.
There is no possibility left. The probability is not left. In the case of the difference between the white and black, or yellow and green, then there are, in between that, there are many probabilities opened. So why he is proposing that, why in Buddhism the mutual exclusiveness has a perfect vyapti of negation, then vyapti, it determines that no other probability is possible under such a circumstance or scenario.
No, but again, the problem comes like this. Mutual exclusiveness, like tossing a coin. You have two options, either head or tail. This is also mutually exclusive.
No. It is not mutual exclusive.
Yes.
Tossing a coin.
Yeah, either it will be
because
head.
before you toss the coin,
Yeah.
it is a probability. It is not mutual exclusive.
No.
Once you have tossed it, then it is.
No, you model the whole phenomena in terms of the probability. I am not saying probability. I am saying you have the empirical phenomena.
Yeah.
That tossing a coin.
Right.
Now I am getting.
When you say tossing a coin,
Yes.
it's before the flip flip has taken place, or after
No.
the side is
No,
determined.
I am taking a coin. Then I am saying that I am tossed a coin. So then I am seeing what is the outcome of the experiment. Outcome is once it will be head, another it will be tail.
It
Then
will
how-
be. It will be tail,
Yeah.
or it will be head. There is, probability is always there.
No, now
But in Buddhist logic case also, probability is there at that time. It is not mutual exclusive. But once it is tossed and it is determined, at that time it is mutual exclusive.
Yeah, but then the modeling with the probability here, it has a different connotation from Brownian motions. So there are two types of explanation for probability.
Thank you. I'm really sorry to say that we cannot take questions anymore because of shortage of time. So with this, we have come to the end of today's first session. And I would like to thank our chairperson, Professor C.C. Roila, for chairing this session. And I also would like to thank all our speakers for a very informative and for a very insightful take on today's topic. And I'm certain that everyone has learned quite a lot on this session. So last but not the least, I would like to request Venerable Geshe Ngawa Samdila to kindly offer a katak and souvenirs to all the speakers. Please give a round of applause to all the speakers. Venerable Geshe Tenzin Selela. Professor R. Ramanathan ji. Venerable Geshe Tenzin Thamjola. Thank you, Venerable Geshe Ngawasamdela. We will now disperse for a lunch break for an hour. I would like to request everyone to be back in the auditorium at 2 p.m. for our second session. Thank you.